Please welcome Ben Ludwig to our show. Ben is the Chief Operating Officer of Traction Group, an F-45 training company. Ben is also the growth pastor for Crosspoint, where he oversees the leadership and network for a multi-site church. Ben, thanks for coming on the Fitness Business Podcast.
Dory, it's so exciting to be back.
Yes. So speaking of being back, for all of our FPP listeners out there, if they're like, Ben Ludwig, the name sounds familiar, that's because it should, right, Ben?
Right.
What show number were you on? I know you know it.
I was on episode 329, The Power and Place of Role Play. That was, Dory, what was that, a year and a half ago?
I can tell you exactly. That show released on my birthday, December 16th of last year.
Love it. That's awesome.
Perfect. Yes. So I got to be honest with you, Ben, your show has done amazing. And that's why we decided to have you come back on almost for like an encore episode. You have blown away the 2,000 downloads, first of all, just to let you know. And even this week alone, and what are we on Wednesday? You had 10 downloads just this week. And look, we're almost not quite a year, but I don't know, maybe that was you just hitting the download button.
1990 of those were me, right?
Oh, too funny. But yes, your show has done incredible. So again, we wanted to have you come back. We have a new topic though today. Your topic today is managing through the ugly, how to deal with the hard changes. So just tell us a little bit about how you feel and why you feel like you're the industry expert on this topic. I know you've been through a lot and you've worn a lot of hats. So please just maybe give our listeners an update on your life.
Yeah, Dory, I get asked this question all the time from other fitness industry people. They're like, man, how did you make it to the top? How are you so successful? And what I'll tell you, Dory, is my journey probably wasn't a lot different than other people's journeys started. I've been through so many hard times. I mean, I've been laid off multiple times. I've had, just figure it out bosses that gave me no budgets. I've had budgets denied. I've had investment firms that gave me P&Ls and gave me goals and I didn't hit them. I mean, I've also had all my staff leave me and blame it on me. And I've been stuck by myself in gyms. It's just, I've been through so many hard times. I think figuring it out and learning from my experiences is what's gotten me to where I am today. And I'm here today to talk about the things that we just don't really talk about in the fitness industry. And it's how to deal with those ugly and hard situations.
Yeah, when you submitted to talk again on the Fitness Business Podcast, the thing that kind of caught me were two words. I love the word ugly and I love the word changes, like hard, I should say probably three words, hard changes. I love that because I've been really trying with some of the most recent episodes to get some of our industry experts to talk about the mistakes that they made and either what they learned from the mistakes or how they turn mistakes around, because I don't feel like you don't grow unless you make mistakes. So I love the fact that you've kind of had the ups and downs in your career.
Totally. It's been a roller coaster. And I think one of the few things that has separated my career, Dory, is, I do what I do for a reason. I want to change people's lives. And I believe that if you have that as your driving factor and you're going to do whatever it takes to figure it out, well, you'll get there eventually. But the point of today's show is to hopefully shorten that learning curve and help people get through those hard times and plan for those hard times.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about, how to identify and plan for the hard situation. But before I do that, I do want to ask you, in the recent 3 years with F-45, give me just at least one up or one down that really sticks out to you.
Yeah. Well, Dory, I told you I've been laid off multiple times. F-45 was one of the companies that laid me off. We've been through such hard times. They laid me off and then hired me back. They've gone through changes as far as staffing and how we were going to operate as a franchise. And Dory, I was part of the performance team, which, most franchises have some sort of business consulting sector. And that was us. That was the performance team. And we really were tasked with just figuring out how to raise the average unit volume for stores across the globe. And they were, we were hired and they said, hey, we need higher AUVs, figure it out. So with us, that was really kind of part of the unknown for us, is we had to learn what people were doing. We had to figure out what systems were happening inside of our high performing studios, and were they going to work in different markets? And we really had to research a lot. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today when it comes to how to deal with ugly situations, I had to practice what I preached at F45, because we were kind of in a figure it out situation. And I mean, the company's still figuring it out, as you can see. I now work for one of the groups that's opening F45s across the country, which is my recent executive title. But what I can tell you is it's still evolving to this day. And part of my role, even with this group, I'm giving feedback to headquarters as to what's working to make sure that the globe can still operate and continue to grow effectively.
Well, if I may just add one thing that you can take back to corporate, is I absolutely feel, this is my opinion, there's one thing I see on social media is advertisements for F45 all the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got a marketing budget. That's for sure.
You guys do. I'm like, oh, there's F45. And I'm so curious. I just don't know if there's an F45 around where I live, but I do need to research that, because I'm actually very curious about trying out the program. It looks awesome. It really looks like a great workout.
I'll be happy to send you in the right direction.
Perfect. All right. So let's get back on track here. Then if you could just talk to our listeners about how you identify and how you plan for those hard situations that you've either experienced or you foresee coming.
For sure. The first thing that I would say, Dory, is myself in my career, I found myself not planning for hard situations, and I always end up behind the 8 ball. So what I would say is you have to have a mindset that things are going to go wrong, and not in a negative way, but just more so in a way that allows you to be able to have backup plans. That's one of the things that I've recently gotten a lot better at over the last few years, is I've really been good at really setting up my first plan, but also going, okay, if this doesn't work, what else can we do? Let's make sure that we're thinking ahead. I'm big on planning a quarter ahead. So let's look at next quarter. Let's set some goals for where we want to go, and also have some backup plans as to what we're going to do if things don't go so well. The second thing that I would say is you have to be humble. For me, I ask a ton of questions. Ask any of the owners that I've consulted, the groups that I work with, even my job now. I'm constantly asking my staff questions to hear how they think and get their feedback. Because here's the thing, Dory, when you're managing through change, you've got to have people's buy-in. And if they think that you're just tossing out orders from an ivory tower, it's going to be really hard to steer the ship. Whereas when your staff feels like you've really gotten their feedback and given them an idea as to that they're a part of those decisions, it's a lot easier to help make those decisions because you've got their buy-in. And then the last thing that I would say is I'm also really big on tying in my staff's goals to where my company is going. In order for me to be successful, I have to make sure that I'm bringing people to where they want to go. So yes, we've got membership targets at our studios, but I'm not setting membership targets because this is just the goal. I'm setting membership targets and then helping train you based on what your goals are. Does my staff does the membership manager want a new car? Does my head trainer want to get out of his apartment and buy a house? We have to be able to bring people where they want to go, which gets us to where we want to go.
So let's go back to the word mindset. I love the word mindset. I feel like if you are anybody that's into leadership or read a lot of leadership books, they'll talk about your mindset. And I always feel as if mindset is easy if things are going well. Oh, yeah. Mindset is really challenging to get a hold of when things are starting to either go down slope or they're not going or you're frazzled. Who do you, and I don't necessarily mean like one specific person, but maybe you could give advice on who you go to when you need to reset your mindset, or maybe you feel that mindset going down and you need to, as the leader, get it to go back up. Any advice for our FBP family out there?
Yes. So wherever you are in leadership, there's two things that you have to consider. The first thing is you need mentorship. And the second thing is you need to be mentoring people. There's always going to be people ahead of you, and there's always going to be people behind you as far as where you're at in development. So by committing to mentoring other people, you've got to be strong for them. So just by setting that expectation for yourself, you will have a stronger mindset. And then the second thing is you also can't expect yourself to be perfect or always have that positive mentality or we're going to make this happen no matter what. So you need to have mentors. You need to be able to go to people and say, hey, I'm dealing with a tough situation. I'm not sure if I'm right for this. Like, tell me what I need to do, or help me think through this. Because even myself, Dory, I consider myself a very confident person. Just ask my wife. But even myself, I find myself at times second guessing my decisions in my head and going, am I doing the right thing? And having those mentors in my life has really helped ground me and ensure that I'm moving my business, my family, and my personal development in the right direction.
I get a lot of people just in conversation, and you probably do too, and we'll talk about mentors, and they're like, I don't have a mentor. I don't know where to go get a mentor. And I know one thing I always try to give for advice is, I always feel like people like being mentors. I think it's an honor to be a mentor, but I will say sometimes you have to watch that you don't pick somebody that's so super busy or so high up that they really don't have time to be your mentor. I always find there's like a balance. If you want to have somebody that maybe has experience more than you personally have, but they still at least have time to mentor you and give advice. Thoughts on that?
I love that, Dory. And I'm also huge on networking. I'm really big, and everyone that I mentor, I encourage them to find ways to connect with other industry individuals and find ways to really make friends when it comes to the fitness industry. Because you want to find someone that's a bit ahead of you in where you want to be in your career, but you also want to find someone that you connect with, someone that you get along with, someone that you enjoy meeting with, someone that you look forward to that conversation, and they do the same, which I think makes it easier as well.
Yeah, I think your key word there is they want to do the same.
Yes, correct. Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what sort of changes are most common, or we'll say changes or hard times are most common in the fitness industry, and why do you think that is?
For sure. First thing that I would say, Dory, is a little bit of history. I've consulted for studios across the globe, and then also ran and owned studios myself as well. So I've kind of seen the broad spectrum of what it looks like as far as competition. And what I would say as far as changes in the fitness industry is, first and foremost, there's always going to be something new or market trends happening in your area. New gyms are going to open. Someone's going to be cheaper. Someone's going to open something that has something cooler than your gym or studio. There's always going to be new players in the markets. That's the first thing. The second thing is, the fitness industry, unfortunately, is somewhat known for staff turnover. We see a lot of that happening. It's just a shorter life cycle than the average industry, unfortunately, which I'll address in a minute. Number three, I think business evolution is, I think back to whenever I first started personal training, I was asking people for money every single month. We didn't even have EFT billing. I'm aging myself a little bit here, but nowadays, think of if we didn't evolve our business to an EFT model, right? So what I'm saying there is your business has to evolve. There's going to be new program offerings that might be best for your core demographic that you need to consider. There's going to be changes in how you price your membership or additional offerings that make sense based on the industry that you have to consider. COVID was a great example for us. We saw so many businesses pivot. Even with F45, we pivoted to online, right? And I think we did a great job of it. So how do we charge for that? Well, as the consulting firm, that's what we did. We coached owners on how to be able to charge for that. So those are all the different things that we see, Dory. And the last thing that I would say is, you're always going to have certain situations when dealing with staff as well. People aren't happy with their pay. People need more time off than what's been given to them, or they have issues with other staff members. So that, it's common. You're dealing with people economics. So you have to understand that there's so many extraneous variables that are going to affect your success of your studio and the performance of what happens on the day-to-day level as well.
Listen, we've been in the business a long time when you can remember the days of the members writing checks at your front desk.
Man, I tell you what, we're aging ourselves right now, but it happens. Believe it or not. Some trainers on here are going, are you serious? There was a day before they had monthly billing?
Yeah, they would stand at the desk you'd have to give them a pen, and they'd pull their check out and they'd write you a check for either their membership or their personal training services or whatever it may be. Remember that all so well.
We've come a long way.
I think a hot topic, not just here on the Fitness Business Podcast, and I don't even say just in our industries, but all industries, is staffing. How can our listeners, our FBP family, best prepare their staff to evolve and to change and to move along in a positive way?
Absolutely. The first way that I would answer that question, Dory, is I personally have committed to consistently developing my staff. I always want to spend time coaching them on how to be better. I think because of the high turnover of the fitness industry, I talk to so many owners, and I've even seen managers that I've managed myself not want to invest in their staff because they feel like it's a waste of time. Look, they're going to turn over anyway. They're not going to be here for long anyway. Why develop them? Well, the thing about it is, I believe that if we all committed as leadership in the fitness industry to developing our staff, we could turn that curve. We could help make the fitness industry a better served industry because people stay longer, because they're invested in. So that's my first piece of advice is you have to commit to growing your staff. And here's one way to think about that. As an owner or an executive in your business, every second that you spend with a staff member is an opportunity to influence them. That's your chance to be able to make sure that they walk away and you walk away, you feeling like you've accomplished something because you've trained somebody, and them feeling like they've learned something because they've been invested into. That's where people believe in you. The second thing that I would say is you have to ask a ton of questions. I think what I have done in my career is I've tried to commit to ensuring that when I'm working with a staff member, I'm not talking the whole time, which I've been known for in the past. Let me tell you, I'm a teacher at heart. I'm a coach at heart. I want people to learn and grow. So I have to be careful not to talk the whole time. I need to get opinions from my staff to make sure that they believe that there's a hole in the business, and then I coach. So I try and make sure that I can feed back the situation to the staff member, have them feel like, yes, that all makes sense. I do see where this hole is. Now I'm ready to listen. It's almost like a sales conversation. I know you used to sell membership stories, so you're familiar with asking the discovery questions, feeding it back to the customer realizing, yes, I've got a problem. I'm not accountable to myself, and then selling the membership. It's the same principle. You just need to use it in dealing with your staff, because once they're willing to listen, that's when they'll grow.
So obviously from your quick fire 5 questions from last week, and you're probably wondering where I'm going with this, your bucket list item is to sing the national anthem in an NFL game. So I'm going to assume that you are an NFL or a football, let's just say football fan. Am I correct?
I am a passive fan, I have to admit. I do love watching football, but I am not like the stat guy that's watching every single Sunday. I know every player. I don't even play fantasy football with my friends. So I'm more of a passive fan, if I'm honest. All
right. Let's cut that. Let me rephrase this. Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm going to assume, Ben, from your answer last week in our quick fire 5, and that was you would like to sing in an NFL game. I'm going to talk about Coach Nick Saban. He's the football coach for Alabama University. Right. I'm not sure if you saw this, but they just had a video out on social media. I don't know if it's new or old, but he was talking to his team, and he talked about, and you will appreciate this, again, if you're of Christian faith, that God gave us all 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and that is to listen more and talk less.
That's exactly right, Dory. I actually, in all of my sales training, I teach that principle. If you're talking more than you're listening, then you're missing the point, because the customer needs to sell themselves on the membership. You don't need to sell them.
So going back to the staff and investing in them, and I have heard I'm with you on this, many business owners like, listen, they don't want to invest because they feel about the turnover and it's a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And I'm just like, to me, that's why you have turnover. Like you have no choice but to invest in your staff. And if you don't create a culture where they feel as if you do invest in them, or you do want to invest in them and you do care about them, that's, I feel like, where your vicious cycle just comes of the door constantly revolving with employees.
Yeah. And I want to make another point there too, Dory, because I feel like that's another one of the things that we don't talk about in the industry is I've got a sales manager in my studio, and I want to make sure that they sell as many memberships as possible, right? So I'm going to not give them specific hours. I'm just going to say, we need to make as many calls as it takes to hit X amount of sales, or, hey, make sure that we have staff on Saturday and Sunday to make sure that we're hitting our sales numbers. And it's just vague, right? Well, the problem with that is we're not committing to growing that staff member. We're only committed to getting that staff member to achieve a target. So we're missing the point. Another thing that I'm big on is investing in your staff to help them have a better understanding of the industry. I talked about the fact that one of the changes in the fitness industry is there's going to be competition coming into your market. Get your sales manager to go shop the competition, to go out and take a trial there, get a membership there, see what it's like, meet some of the coaches, get out and go to their boot camps to see what's happening there. I think there's this fear of, oh, well, what if that my staff member goes and meets the owner and he likes them and they end up leaving? Or what if I let my staff member leave the studio? Well, then they're not making phone calls or making sales, right? It's a fear. I've been that person. I've been scared of that. But the thing is, when you're investing in them to check out the competition, what you're saying is, I trust you and I want you to be the expert, not just me. I want you to be the expert. You're showing trust. And then to the second point, I don't need my staff member working 60, 70 hours a week to make all their sales, because they're going to get burned out if they do that. So why not make an effective 40 to 50 hours and then let them take the additional time to go check out the competition, because they're going to be so much more excited about our product whenever they see that the competition maybe isn't as good as ours, or whatever the case may be. Or if it is better, what can we change? Give me your feedback, right? So that's where we have to ensure that we're investing and trusting our staff to become better.
And I know this isn't a sales episode, but no employee wants to sit and make phone calls all day. It's the worst. I've done it. It's the worst thing in the world. Nobody answers. They hang up on you. I mean, maybe out of 20 phone calls, you get one. I always say gold is in the old, right? You get one person you can gauge a conversation with. So I always felt like on those days, when they walk through the door and they know it's a call day, I tried to like either have some food for them or just something. I would love to try to think of something I could do for them to at least have a little bit of a bright spot in making and sitting there for 8 hours or 7 hours or 5 hours, whatever it is, making phone calls.
Yeah. I've been there and done it too, Dory. I mean, I've been there. Oh gosh, you're bringing back so many memories of closeouts where I've personally made 200 phone calls in a day just to show the staff that it can be done, right? Like, come on, guys, I'm doing this with you. Let's do this together. It's just, if we had done a better job of managing our time and had been ahead of our goal, maybe we wouldn't have had to make 200 phone calls on the last day of the month, right?
Literally, I think the most I've made is 100. We had a goal where we'd make 100 phone calls a day. We call it like 100 call day. And it literally would take us all, like if you were just one person, it took me all day to do 100 phone calls. And you're kind of like, oh, it's not that bad. But let me tell you, when you're in the 30s, you are like, I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to make it. I feel like I've made 75 and I'm only on 34. So, all right. Okay, back to your topic. I apologize. Here we go. Last question, Ben. What are some first steps? Because again, our FBP listeners out there could be new business owners. They could be new managers or department heads. What are some first steps to getting better at getting through those tough times, those hard times?
Totally. The first piece of advice that I would give, Dory, is you need to be an encourager, but don't be fake. I think for me, I'm naturally an optimist. So that comes easy for me, but I also have to be a realist. And there's been times that we have had some very hard situations that I've gone through with staff that I have had to really help encourage people like, look, we're going to get through this. We need to set some targets. Let's look and see, when are we going to be restaffed? When are we going to be back on track to hit our goals? When are we going to get out of this mess? And that's where the realism comes into play, is we've got to be able to really talk about where we're at. I can't say things like, oh, it's not that bad, we'll figure it out. Or, I don't know, we're just going to power through it because we're the best and you can't be fake, right? You've got to be real with your staff. So when you're in a tough situation, talk about the situation, be real with your people. But then once we have an understanding, I can't wallow in our sorrow and say, oh yeah, it's just tough. I guess it was just going to be a bad month. No, we've got to set some targets and figure out step by step, how are we going to get out of this? I think number 2 is one of the tips that I gave earlier is you have to have backup plans. So plan A didn't go as you thought it would. What was plan B? Who were you going to move into that role if a staff member leaves? Or how are you going to handle a situation if there's an ugly situation that happens between staff members? You have to think through these things before it happens. That way you have an idea of how you're going to deal. And then number 3, I think this is the most important, Dory, is you also need to discuss the future with your team. I think in the fitness business, we get so caught up in what's happening this week, or how are we going to hit our total membership count for the end of this month. We get so caught up in talking about like what's happening right now that we forget to really paint a picture of the future for our staff. And here's the thing, when you know what your staff wants to accomplish, you can tie in their goals to the future and talk about that with them, because they're naturally going to be pulled towards the future when they feel like they're a part of where you're trying to go. If they just think that their role is just to hit the membership numbers so you can go where you want to go, there's not going to be that much buy-in. So talk about the future with your staff and make them a part of those conversations when you're looking at new sites, or when you're looking at upgrading your equipment, or when you're looking at adding new staff members. Get their opinion. They appreciate that, and they will be more bought in.
Excellent advice, Ben. This is why we have you come back. I don't know. Next year, might be the trifecta.
We'll see. Give my hat trick.
Ben, such great advice today. Honestly, thank you so much. You're such a great industry expert for not only for myself, and the Fitness Business Podcast, but our listeners out there as well. So we really appreciate you coming on to the show today.
So thankful to be here, Dory. I really appreciate it.